the full-service restaurant chains are trying to do everything they can to make it safe for their customers. I think all the major chains are really putting safety protocols in place. But I think ultimately the consumer is the one who's making the decision. Are they comfortable leaving the house and actually going and sitting in a restaurant, or should they go to curbside or just stay at home and have dinner, coming out of the oven?
Right. And, it's a difficult, obviously, calculation for a lot of people to make. We saw, for example, that the drive-through oriented fast food chains did very well during this period of time. Would you continue to expect them to outperform?
I absolutely would. I think consumers have a greater degree of confidence in going through a drive-through and keeping themselves safe as opposed to sitting down in a restaurant. I think curbside to go for the full-service chains is important, but not nearly as important as being able to go inside and safely eat within their restaurants. I think consumers ultimately want to do that, but I think these recent hotspots that we've seen really develop, I think have really, given pause to a lot of consumers who are reconsidering, where they're going to get their next meal.
And is there anyone, Bob, in the kind of sit-down space? I know you said you're pretty cautious on Cheesecake, Cracker Barrel, Chuy's, Texas Roadhouse, have a market perform on all of those. I mean, is there any? I don't know what these places are supposed to do at this point, right? I mean, do they have any options if they say, okay, well, what can we do over the next 6 to 12 months to try to make our dining more attractive for these consumers?
It's interesting you ask that question because one company, especially Brinker International, they operate the Chili's brand, Maggiano's. Chili's has outperformed most of their peers. But the thing that's very interesting to me is the fact that they've recently developed this ghost kitchen concept called It's Just Wings. It operates within the Chili's restaurants, completely separate, from the Chili's operations, and it's a pure delivery brand. So that certainly adds an interesting element of potential upside that we see to sales for that brand over the next 12 months.
Bob, are there certain restaurant chains that are more exposed to the areas that are facing closings, reclosings, or flare-ups in COVID cases, Sunbelt states, Arizona, et cetera?
Yeah, I think, certainly the Southeast has been really hard hit with a lot of flare-ups. One of the names in our universe, Cracker Barrel, they do a terrific job generally keeping customers comfortable and safe within the restaurants. However, they operate an awful lot of restaurants within those areas where we've really seen a lot of hot spots. That's one brand, especially because they skew to an older consumer who's a little bit more thoughtful about using these masks. I think they may have some headwinds ahead.
Kate, I wonder, as we talk about the split, there was some research on the street about this today that the big publicly traded restaurants are much closer to being back to year-ago levels than mom-and-pop restaurants who don't have the financial resources. We talk a lot about the publicly traded names, obviously, because they're tradable, but are all of those names winning share at the expense of the much smaller players, do you think?
I wouldn't say they're all...
Well, you have to imagine they're...
Yeah, Kate, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I wouldn't say that they're necessarily taking all of the share, but they definitely have more exposure and can afford to team up with these delivery aggregators and work with all of them. So they just have a much wider reach. For a smaller, more independent mom and pop, it's really expensive to work with a Grubhub and Uber Eats, a DoorDash, etc. Some I've talked to have actually taken that on themselves to avoid paying for those fees. But, the two different types of restaurants and the consumer that they're serving, tend to be different. And it's about who can afford it, really. And I think that's what we're going to see moving forward, is that the ones that can afford it are the ones that will stay afloat. The ones that can't, unfortunately, will be going out of business.